I should have drowned last July. That's not dramatic flair or exaggeration. I literally should have died in the water at Crescent Beach, pulled under by a riptide I didn't see coming, my lungs burning as the ocean decided it wanted to keep me. But I didn't drown because of him, because of Marcus, the lifeguard with the kind eyes who pulled me back to shore, who breathed life back into my chest, who saved me in more ways than he could have known that day. And now, every single morning, my phone buzzes at exactly 6:15, and it's him, always him, a simple text that's become the most important part of my day. It started with, "Hey, just checking in. How are you feeling today?" That was 3 days after the incident. I was still shaky, still having nightmares about the weight of water pressing down on me, still feeling phantom salt burning my throat every time I closed my eyes. I hadn't expected to hear from him. He'd given me his number at the beach, sure, but I thought that was just protocol. Lifeguard procedure. Make sure the guy you resuscitated doesn't have complications or something. I didn't think he'd actually use it, but he did. And when I saw his name on my screen that first morning, something in my chest loosened. Something I didn't even know was tight. I remember typing and deleting my response about 4 times before settling on "better, thanks for checking." So casual, so normal, like my entire world hadn't just reorganized itself around the fact that this stranger cared enough to ask. His reply came fast. "Glad to hear it. The ocean's got nothing on you, man. You're tougher than you think." I stared at those words for probably 20 minutes. Nobody had ever called me tough. I was the guy who worked in data analysis, who spent his days in a climate-controlled office, who'd chosen the beach that day specifically because I needed to feel something other than the crushing monotony of my life. I wasn't tough. I was barely holding it together most days. But Marcus didn't know that. Or maybe he did, and he was choosing to see something else in me. The next morning, another text. "Morning. Did you sleep better last night?" He remembered I'd mentioned the nightmares. That small detail I'd let slip in my response, and he'd held on to it, thought about it, brought it back up. I sat in my kitchen with my coffee getting cold, reading his message over and over, feeling something unfamiliar spreading through my ribs. Warmth, maybe, or hope, or the terrifying realization that someone was paying attention. "A little," I wrote back. "Still weird being near water. Even the shower feels strange." "That's normal," he responded. "Your body's processing trauma. Be patient with yourself. It gets easier, I promise." Be patient with yourself. When was the last time someone had given me permission to struggle, to not be okay? I couldn't remember. My whole life had been about pushing through, about being fine, about not making waves. And here was this guy, this lifeguard, who'd seen me at my most vulnerable, telling me it was okay to not have it all figured out. That was 2 months ago, and he hasn't missed a single morning since. 6:15. Every day, like clockwork. Sometimes it's a question. What's one thing you're looking forward to today? Sometimes it's a random fact. Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts? Seems excessive, but kind of cool. Sometimes it's just an observation. The sunrise was incredible this morning. Wish you could have seen it from the tower. I've started waking up before my alarm, waiting for that buzz. I've started thinking about my answers the night before, wondering what I'll say, what small piece of my day I'll share with him. It's become this ritual, this anchor point, that everything else in my life orbits around. And the crazy thing is, I don't even know if he realizes what he's doing. If he understands that these texts have become the difference between me just existing and actually living. We met for coffee 3 weeks after the incident. He suggested it casually, tucked into a morning text. "Been thinking it might be nice to talk in person, if you're comfortable, no pressure." I said yes before I could overthink it. We met at this little place near the beach, though I still couldn't bring myself to look at the water. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, and seeing him out of context was jarring. He wasn't wearing the red Lifeguard shorts and white tank top. He was in jeans and a faded blue Henley that made his eyes look even warmer than I remembered. He stood when he saw me, smiled this genuine smile that reached all the way to his eyes, and suddenly I was nervous in a way that had nothing to do with almost drowning. "Hey," he said, and his voice was exactly like I remembered. Calm, steady, safe. "Hey," I managed back. We talked for 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 30 minutes. He told me about growing up in a military family, moving every few years, never quite feeling rooted anywhere until he found the ocean. He told me about choosing to be a lifeguard, not for the summer job aspect, but because he'd lost a friend to drowning when he was 16 and couldn't save him. He told me about his little sister who was studying marine biology, about his mom who sent him care packages, even though he was 28 years old, about his fear of heights, which seemed ironic for someone who spent all day in an elevated chair. And I told him things I hadn't told anyone, about my dad who'd passed away 2 years ago and how I still hadn't processed it, about feeling like I was sleepwalking through my own life, about choosing to go to the beach that day because some part of me wondered what would happen if I just kept swimming. I didn't say that last part explicitly, but I think he heard it anyway, the way his expression shifted, the way he reached across the table and just put his hand over mine for a second, warm and solid and real. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "I'm really glad you're here." I believed him. That was the thing. I absolutely believed him. The morning texts changed after that, got deeper, more personal. He started telling me about his day before it happened, his hopes for it. I started doing the same. We'd compare notes in the evening, text back and forth about how reality matched expectation. He sent me photos sometimes, the view from his Lifeguard tower, his sister's new puppy, a sunset that reminded him of something I'd said. I started sending photos back, my morning coffee, the weird cloud formation I saw on my commute, a book I was reading that I thought he'd like. Small things, normal things, things that added up to something that felt significant, even though I couldn't name what it was. My best friend Rachel noticed the change in me. "You're different," she said one night over dinner. "Lighter or something. What's going on?" I wanted to tell her about Marcus, about the texts and the coffee and the way my entire nervous system seemed to recalibrate when I heard from him, but I didn't know how to explain it without it sounding like more than it was. Or maybe I was scared to admit it might be exactly what it sounded like. "Just feeling better," I said instead. "Processing things." She gave me this look, this knowing look that said she didn't buy it but would let it go for now. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I haven't seen you smile like this in years." The thing is, I didn't know what we were doing, Marcus and I. We texted every day. We'd gotten coffee 4 more times. Once we'd grabbed dinner. Twice we'd gone for walks, though never near the beach. I still couldn't handle that. But we never talked about what this was, if it was anything. If I was reading too much into his consistency, his attention, the way he looked at me sometimes like I was something precious he was afraid to break. I was terrified to ask, terrified that naming it would ruin it, that I'd discover these texts that had become my lifeline were just him being a good guy, checking on someone he'd saved, nothing more complicated than that. But then yesterday morning, the text was different. "I need to tell you something. Can we meet today?" My heart dropped. This was it. This was him saying the check-ins were done. I was clearly fine now. He was moving on with his life. This was the end of the thing I'd been too scared to acknowledge I desperately didn't want to end. I met him at our usual coffee place, my stomach in knots. He was already there, looking nervous in a way I'd never seen him. He kept running his hand through his hair, this anxious gesture that made him seem younger, more uncertain. "So," he started, then stopped, laughed a little. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks. Here it comes," I thought. "The goodbye. That day on the beach," he continued, "when I pulled you out of the water, when I was doing compressions, trying to get you breathing again, all I could think was, please, just please. I didn't even know you, but I needed you to be okay. And when you finally coughed up that water, when your eyes opened and you looked at me, I felt something I'd never felt before." He paused, met my eyes. "I felt like I'd been waiting my whole life for you to start breathing. Which sounds insane, I know. We'd never met, but there was something. And then, when I gave you my number, I told myself it was professional, just checking on a rescue, but I wanted to text you that first morning. I wanted to text you every morning. I wanted an excuse to be part of your life." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "These past 2 months," Marcus said, his voice softer now. "Getting to know you, talking to you every day, seeing you put yourself back together piece by piece, watching you get stronger, I've fallen for you. Completely. And I know the circumstances are weird. I know I literally saved your life, and that's a strange foundation for whatever this is. But I can't keep pretending these are just friendly check-ins. They're not. Not for me." I couldn't breathe. But this time it was because of hope, not water. This time it was because everything I'd been afraid to want was sitting right in front of me, real and possible and terrifying. "I wake up thinking about what I'm going to text you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I go to sleep thinking about what you said. You're the first person I want to tell when something happens. You're the reason I started trying again. Not just to recover from almost drowning, but to actually live. You saved my life, Marcus. And then you kept saving it. Every single morning at 6:15. His smile was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "So," he said, reaching across the table for my hand, "can I keep texting you every morning, but maybe as your boyfriend instead of just your concerned lifeguard?" I laughed, and it came out a little broken, a little wet, but completely genuine. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I'd really like that." This morning, the text came at 6:15, like always, but it was different. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight. P.S. Still can't believe I get to call you mine." I'm sitting here with my coffee, reading it for probably the 10th time. And I keep thinking about how strange life is. How I went to the beach that day feeling lost and empty and unsure if I wanted to keep going. How the ocean tried to take me. How Marcus refused to let it. How he's refused to let me go ever since. People talk about finding your person, about that moment when you know. I thought I knew when he pulled me from the water, but I was wrong. I knew when he texted me that first morning. When he chose to show up day after day, message after message, until I understood that someone cared, that I mattered, that my life was worth saving and not just from drowning. The lifeguard saved my life last summer, and now he texts me every morning, and I text him back, and we're building something beautiful from the wreckage of the worst day of my life. Sometimes the ocean takes, but sometimes, if you're really lucky, it gives you exactly what you need. Right when you need it most. It gave me Marcus, and he gave me back to myself. And every morning at 6:15, I get to be reminded that I'm loved, that I'm seen, that I'm here, that I'm alive. And God, it feels good to be alive.